Greetings, everyone. It is Gleekon here again with another episode of Lore of Warcraft. Stay a while and listen to this one. We are finally here. I could barely sleep. I'm so excited. It's been over a quarter of 1,000 episodes. It's been over half a year that we've been building up to this, but we are finally going to start our Let's Plays on the next episode. For this one, I wanted to peek through the manual of the first game. We're not going to read like every single page or anything, but I wanted to look at the lore aspect, most of which is going to be no longer applicable and has been retconned. But I thought it would be fun to just go through it, read the lore, look at some of the character things. So the original manual to the game was broken up into two manuals. One is if you were going to be the humans, and one for the orcs. We'll look through both. We'll read the differing lore for both, and we'll make some comments. So let's see. This first one we'll look at is the humans. We're going to do the human campaign first, but we're going to do them like in tandem. Like we'll do in a mission 1 for each, then mission 2 for each, and so on and so forth. But when we're doing each pair, I'm going to do the humans first because, according to canon, one of the few things that does hold is that the orcs do win the first war. Almost everything that happens is either not mentioned anywhere in any of the further lore, or is like later on it's replaced by something else. So there's very little that happens in this first game that actually sticks as is. But yeah, let's look through here. So I'm not going to look through all of our troubleshooting and what kind of computer you needed to run this game on DOS. So when I first played this game, I'll try to give you a little backstory for the different games as I played them. This game came out in 1994, so we're looking at a game that is almost 30 years old at this point in time. When we play, it's going to definitely be a retro experience. You can only play it on DOSBox. So sites like Good Old Games or whatever, GOG, are your best bet. But you can honestly, you could probably find a shareware version of this game and just play it for free if you really wanted to. I did not play this game when it first came out. When it first came out, my computer probably couldn't have even handled this game. My real introduction to Blizzard games came with Diablo 1. And that's really when I started playing a lot. When we play Warcraft 2, after we finish this game, by that time I was fully bought hook, line, and sinker into the Blizzard's games. I loved them, and that was a defining part of my youth. I did come back and play this game maybe about 10 years ago, just for fun, just to go back and see. I'm not anticipating any real difficulties. I don't super remember. I played it through once, maybe twice. I don't remember having any problems. I don't remember it being a super difficult game, unlike Warcraft 2, which does, especially in the later levels, require quite a bit of strategy and planning. I think you can just generally follow sound principles of RTS games, and you'll be fine if you wanted to play through this game on your own. But so where this goes in my life and my approach to Wizard games is that I kind of, as a curio, I only came back and played it, like I said, though, once, maybe twice. All right, so let's look at the humans version of events leading up to this. Is the Chronicles of the War in Azeroth, a treatise of the events leading to the war between mankind and the Orcish Hordes, as related by Sir Lothar, Knight of the Realm. So we've got a few pages of lore for each. Nothing compared to what we've been going through, so I know we can do it. I am Sir Lothar, armsman to the Brotherhood of the Horse, and a warrior in the king's service. Yeah, so that's not a thing anymore. I feel it necessary to inform you of the events that led us to this time of conflict. The tale of our battle with the Orcs begins some 40 years in the past. Right there, that's retconned, not true. As we know, these things, well, okay, maybe, let's see. I tell you of these things so that you might glean some understanding of our plight and gain insight into our enemy. As a student of history and battle, I have found that only through understanding the past can we make well-thought decisions about the future. So year 559. That dating system is also archaic. I don't think it means anything anymore. I don't think anything's dated like that in the official canon. All has been peaceful for many generations, and the reign of King Rin III is a prosperous one. So here he's just known as King Rin. Later on, Rin becomes the last name, and we start giving these people their official first names. I believe King Rin III would be Lane Rin. The constant bickering and infighting that marred the rules of former kings has no place in the court of Rin. The child sorcerer Medivh is born of a coupling between the court conjurer and a mysterious traveler. After the child is born, the woman disappears and the baby is taken into the court as a ward of the kingdom. Okay, that part stands. 5 years later, 564, the child Prince Lane is born to King Rin and Lady Varia. Okay, so Lane is, that's true. Lane Rin is the second king. That name sticks. I can't remember. So it's not Lane. That's the first King Rin. I can't remember what that first one's name is, but they give him a name. We can probably read about it in The Last Guardian. This is their first and only offspring, but the birth of a son marks the continuation of their line. It is a grand day in the kingdom that is celebrated by great feasts and tournaments. King Rin proclaims the day to be a time for festival for the duration of his rule, and to mark the occasion gives each citizen of Azeroth 1 gold sovereign. I don't know if they're still called sovereigns. Maybe. 571, 7 years later, so that would make Medivh about 12. The marking of the age of ascension from childhood to adulthood is one of great anticipation for both parent and youth. Medivh attains that time and is expected to be given the title as apprentice conjurer to the court. On the eve of this occasion, the boy's sleep is troubled by dark dreams of figures giving chase through deep chasms. Waking in a cold sweat, Medivh makes his way to the bedchamber of his father. As the conjurer reaches out to touch his fevered brow, a burning fire ignites in the child's eyes. The backlash of power must have reached as far as Northshire Abbey, for within the hour over 100 clerics arrived at the castle. Northshire Abbey and its clerics exist. This is retconned to be a little bit later. He's 14 when this happens in the official lore. Only by combining their abilities with the powers of the conjurer were 100 enough to contain Medivh. As magics, unimagined, poured forth from him, the boy screamed in unholy pain at the energies that were channeling through him. Hours passed, perhaps even days, for time seemed to stand still as the onslaught grew in fury. Also, this whole thing of referring to magics with a K, that is something that they do away with. Then, as simply as one snuffs out a candle, both father and son crumpled into a heap. The conjurer lay dead, drained of all life, and Medivh fell into a deep sleep, his heart barely beating, and only the faintest of breath escaping his lips. After long discussion, the king and the abbot of Northshire agree that Medivh should be taken to the abbey for the safety of both child and kingdom. I don't know that he is sequestered to the abbey. According to The Last Guardian, he's kept in the castle, but that may be something that they keep. His dad does die. It doesn't go down with 100 clerics. People aren't quite sure what happened. 577, so that lasts 6 years. So now he would be 18. Lane reaches his age of ascension, and the full station of Prince of Azeroth is bestowed upon him. At this ceremony, tens of thousands of devoted subjects come to offer their wishes of support and long life. During the evening feast with family and those close to the crown, a cold wind began to chill the air. A gentle breeze at first, it grew in intensity until the doors of the great hall were blown off their hinges. As the guests leaned into the wind, a figure emerged, riding the winds like some great bird of prey. They also no longer refer to it as the Kingdom of Azeroth. You could say that that's just a naming convention that they abandoned later. Again, like I've said in some of the other episodes, it's like calling this the Kingdom of Earth or whatever. Eventually, the whole world becomes known as Azeroth. The torches set about the great hall ignited with blue flame, and the visage of Medivh was revealed. As he sat down in front of the king's table, the guards sprang to their feet. A mere pass of his hand kept them motionless, frozen in their places. The sorcerer, now a man, explained that his years of sleep had ended. The years of constant tending from the clerics of Northshire Abbey enabled him to gain control over his powers. When his spirit and body became attuned, he awakened himself and set out to Stormwind Keep at once. Medivh explained that he had come to repay the court for the kindness it had shown to him while he was in their keeping, and to acknowledge the occasion of the ascension ceremony for Prince Lane. From within his flowing cloak he produced an hourglass crafted of deepest obsidian, with sands as white as undriven snow. The young prince looked closely, but although the sand seemed to constantly sift from top to bottom, the lower half never filled and the top never emptied. Medivh claimed that these sands represented the people of the kingdom, and so long as the glass never emptied, the reign of King Rin would not fall. Okay, that's abandoned. Also, Medivh is in a coma much longer than his 7 years. It's more like 20 years. 583, so 6 more years pass. So now Medivh would be about 24. 6 years passed, and the land slowly grew sick. Crops began failing in the rich soils of the kingdom. Children were stricken ill and never fully recovered. Even the moods of the subjects of Azeroth seemed dark. The weather would become unseasonably cold during harvest, and the summer sun scorched the earth and made working out of the shade almost unbearable. Neither cleric nor conjurer could fathom what could be the cause of this change in the lands. More and more people became disheartened, and what once would have been looked over now caused bitter argument. That's scrapped. During a bleak morning, Prince Lane rushed to his father's side carrying the hourglass. During the night, the sands had run down from the top, and it was near emptied. King Rin took the glass into his hands, and a chill ran through the very core of his being. As the last sands trickled to the bottom of the glass, a great crashing sound was heard at the gates of Stormwind Keep. Suddenly the grounds were filled with hideous creatures, gross deformities, a cruel reflection of humanity. They swarmed over the king's guard and tore them to shreds. King Rin sent Lane and Queen Variat with an escort of knights to North Shirabi, promising to call for them when the foul beasts had been destroyed. That day has not yet come. So you could argue that perhaps that's the first attack on Stormwind. And the way the retconning has worked, that first attack is kept. It does happen, but instead it happens in the middle of the war. So they've moved that event around, and I think the king maybe dies because Lane is the king. 584, 1 year later, at the age of 20 years, Lane is pronounced king of Azeroth. His task is clear: to rid the land of these creatures. The few that have survived battle refer to themselves as Orcs. When questioned, they will tell little else and prefer death to releasing information. They are cruel, sadistic, and vile, making no distinctions between soldier or child, warrior or woman. They will slay anyone who they encounter without a second thought. The only humans who do not fall to the Orcish blade are those who are taken to the swamps that have festered in the east, where the Orcs have made their encampments. What they do with these people is unknown, though the worst is feared, for none have ever returned. Those swamps also technically already exist. 593, now 9 more years has passed. So they're 29. Nearly 10 years of skirmishes and raids along the borderlands have kept the people of Azeroth wary, but the Orcish Hordes have been beaten back into their swamps. King Lane has found that the Orcs, though incredibly strong and vicious, were seldom well trained in combat and always disorganized. This has been the key to holding them at bay, and is the weakness he hopes to exploit in the future. The mystery that no cleric or conjurer had found the answer to, though, is the origin of these creatures. So that this length of time that the Orcs have been on Azeroth would explain why Garona could be considered half human if you followed this. Obviously, again, with the great shortening of this time period, they had to switch Garona to be a half orc but not half human. In the 10th year of his reign, King Lane is visited by the mysterious traveler. She has come to the king with a warning that she hopes will aid him in his fight against this nemesis to his land. The coupling between the king's conjurer and herself is intended to create a child that she could pass her knowledge and power onto before leaving this place. She did not count upon other forces in this and other worlds that would seek to dominate the child. She has now become a beacon of mystic power. He has now. That's essentially true. I don't know that she visits the king, but the fact that these are from another world, that stays, and that she passed her power onto him, that stays. She sought him out only a fortnight before and found that the powers that course through his veins have twisted him, making him insane. Realizing the threat he now posed, she was forced to attempt to destroy him. He all but slew her. That's kept. The battle left both combatants drained, but Medivh held enough power to banish her from his sight and command her never to return. His magics were strong enough that even she cannot break this bond, and so can offer no aid in his downfall. The traveler also informs King Lane that it was Medivh who was responsible for the coming of the Orcs to Azeroth. During the battle with his father, he inadvertently opened a gateway to the domain that they and many other foul creatures call home. The orcs are disciples of chaos, however, and not even Medivh has the power to control them. It is true that Medivh is the one behind bringing the orcs. It was not accidental, and it did not happen in his youth. So we've got some, as we know, through the Rise of the Horde and probably coming up in the last Guardian of the Chronicles, much later he intentionally brings the orcs over. And he does not necessarily control them, but he does influence them. Although the battle has Medivh in a greatly weakened state, the Traveler warns that there will be a time when Azeroth will be forced to deal with him. Her parting words to the king were of her hope that the Sorcerer would not become so strong by that time that the whole of this world would suffer. So whether or not Lothar in our book, The Last Guardian, is aware of all of that is a key point, because he obviously is sort of suspicious or wary of Medivh. And yes, in the First War, he does have to be dealt with, and that part stays. Stirrings of war now come from the swamps. The attacks upon our settlements, once scattered and poorly executed, have become more organized. The king has found it necessary to send footmen and archers to protect settlements along the borderlands. That's where we're going to start with our first two missions that we do. Before we read anything else, we'll do the footmen and archer missions. Rumors of the rising of a great Orcish war chief have been heard about the land. He is heard to be a harsh leader who has gathered the feuding orcs under one banner. That's also true, although he did that before they arrived on Azeroth. Old Blackhand. King Lane's scouts and spies have found him to be as cunning as he is bloodthirsty. This foul creature's name is Blackhand, and his control of the Orcish Hordes could spell doom for Azeroth. The king has ordered me to seek out new recruits to train in the rudiments of combat, for the time has come to call upon the people of Azeroth and prepare the kingdom for war. And here's old King Lane, looking beefy and buff like a superhero, with a little Odin-y kind of look toward him, and he is the king. So I don't know that we need to necessarily read all of these things, but we'll glance through them. These are the peasants. Peasants are in both Warcraft 1 and 2. They do your building and working for you. The footmen are your main ground troops. They essentially, I don't know that they're called footmen in Warcraft 2, but they essentially stay the same. The archers, fighting with crossbows. They're important in this game, but they're all but abandoned. They are completely abandoned in the second game and replaced by the elves. Knights are, so we will, when we start to get the knights, that's before we can have missions that actually have these knights. We're going to need to read some more Chronicles, because that's actually a moment when the knights start helping out and are trained. They are the fighting elite. So before we encounter the knight missions, we'll read some more Chronicles. The wounded, I don't know what that's. I think you encountered them on some missions. Catapults, they are, I don't know that we're necessarily going to have to mention them specifically. You would think that's just normal technology. Of course, there are missions that contain them. They are replaced in the second game on the Alliance side with the ballista of the elves. Clerics, they will enter the mission in the third mission. We will have to do a few episodes of Chronicles before we talk about them, but eventually the Clerics of Northshire join the battle and start fighting on the front lines. Conjurers, obviously they exist in The Last Guardian. I don't know that we're going to have, because of how important magic is, I don't know that we're going to specifically actually get a moment in Chronicles that talks about when the mages start helping out. The clerics have certain spells. They have Holy Lance. It's that's sort of, clerics still have a spell that's similar to that. I don't remember what it's called. I can't remember right now off the top of my head, but it's their, maybe it's not Wrath. That's the Druid version. Holy something. I don't know. Of course, they have healing spells, various healing spells. Priests can still cast invisibility, so this is a nod to Warcraft 1. They have that Fade spell. Far-seeing, like I said, I don't think clerics have that anymore. I don't think priests have that. I think this is almost with the same picture, is a shaman spell now. Conjurers slash, we would refer to them as mages. Elemental blast. This is a sphere of charged energy. So that's like a basic pyroblast or whatever. Summon scorpions. That is no longer a thing anywhere ever, but you can do it in this game. Summon elementals. Frost mages can still summon the water elementals. Rain of fire or firestorm. That's more like a flame strike. So those are all, for the most, other than the scorpions. The buildings will be able to build town halls. In Warcraft 2, it's more fun because you can build them up to castles and keeps. Farms, barracks where you get your soldiers, lumber mills allow you to build archers, blacksmiths, I think, are what let you have. I think, oh yeah, that just upgrades your materials. Stables allow you to have knights, churches, priests, towers, sorcerers, or whatever they're called. Gold mines are your main thing. Gold mines and wood. Another thing that I believe that you do in this game that you don't do in Warcraft 2 is build roads. So that's a possibility as well. We will fight ogres. Ogres, and see, these say that they're brethren to the orcs. Dumber, stronger. They don't like to be disturbed. So they're here on Azeroth. They came with the orcs. So all of that stays the same. But obviously, I guess they're breaking off into their own when it comes to the first war. But in Warcraft 2, they are part of the Horde. And now, I don't know what happens in Warcraft 3, but in World of Warcraft, they're not part of the Horde. So scorpions can be summoned or, I guess, encountered naturally. Spiders, I think spiders are summoned by the Horde. We'll find out in a minute. Brigands, neutral jerks. Slimes, I think you find them in some caves. Skeletons, I believe, can be summoned by the Necrolords. Water elementals, I guess. Oh, there are fire elementals as well. Again, that's not a thing anymore. That would be, I don't know why our water elemental has to be like a nude lady, but okay. Fire elementals are, that's just that early 90s. That's how you entice fantasy fans, I guess. Fire elemental appears to be like a nudish lady too. That's not a thing. You can summon the fire elementals, but only if you're a shaman. And demons spelled daemon, which actually in this one that we're reading, Lore of the Rise of the Guardian, they refer to them as one of the two. This or Rise of the Horde, I don't remember. Actually, I think it was Rise of the Horde, where this is how they call demons. They're the most powerful entities that have ever existed. There's a gateway that appears every 13th full moon that bridges the gap between Azeroth and the underworld. I don't know. That's one of those things that's not really, has nothing to do with it anymore. But this would be like a Doomguard. Essentially, Doomguards exist. All right, that is the entire human. Now let's look at the orc side. I hope your computer can handle this. It's really, if your CD-ROM can take, you can't even get a computer with a CD-ROM. It's so much money and effort to build a computer with a CD-ROM. It's not worth it. My last couple computers, I haven't even built one with a. I'm like, don't need to see it. It's useless. The actual last, like 3 computers ago, 3 rigs ago, I made it a point to put the CD-ROM in there, and it was so much work to just update the drivers to make things work on the CD-ROM and be able to even like play DVDs. It's more headache than it's worth. No point anymore. All right, our Orc campaign is the slightly more canon campaign. Let's read this history. The destiny of the Orcish Hordes. The history and legends concerning the invasion and domination of the human lands, scribed by Garona of the Shadow Council. So here she is appearing even then. She is part of the Shadow Council, and she exists. The destiny of the Orcish Hordes. There's Blackhand, the fearsome leader of the Orcs. The stories of battle and victory have always been told, and in the past it was up to the leaders of each assault to document the past. While fine leaders in war, these chieftains lack the ability to convey those actions with written words. I present as an example, Thok go through shiny hole, then me fall down, but me good. Me find many good things to eat, we find village, We mash them and eat their food. Thok, stop now. Head hurt from right. Look at that axe that he's got. A double axe. Why would you even need that? It just seems to be unwieldy, but I mean, it looks pretty neat. The fact that I am of both orc and human lineage, combined with the skills and schooling I have acquired from my journeys, have elevated me to the position I now hold as chief interpreter to the Shadow Council. The duty of preserving the accounts of our conquering of this world and the eventual crusade into the land of humanity has fallen now upon my shoulders. I, Garona, now humbly present that history. She's more than just a chief interpreter, but she's certainly one of the closest things to an ambassador and a double agent that the Shadow Council has. So other than the fact that she's not half human, that part is more or less stayed. Our destiny concerning the domination over these lands has been foretold by the clan mystics for hundreds of years. Having risen from the mire of swamps and marshes, the Orcish Hordes have swept across this domain in the fulfillment of that destiny. Mildly in a way, there are legends, as we read about in Rise of the Horde, about them having salvation and stuff. Many ages passed as our influence slowly spread, causing pain and darkness to follow in our wake. Be they in lush plains, hidden in thick forests, or at the rocky crags overlooking the seaside, our armies rolled over what pathetic resistance our enemies could muster. Their crops died on the stalk, and their fields lay fallow, for we left none alive to tend them. Using the arcane powers of our warlocks and necromancers, not even the mightiest of our foes could long stand against our increasing onslaught. One by one our enemies fell, and we became stronger with each victory. In time, by subjugating all who would oppose our rise to power, and enslaving these weaker races to us as we pleased, we conquered both nature and creatures to finally rise to the pinnacle of this world. Okay. I don't know that we'd call them the pinnacle, but whatever. Also, what other races have they enslaved? Oh, I guess ogres. Still, we craved more, and decades of constant bickering between clans served to divide our race amongst itself. Soon factions arose, each seeking to control the Orcish domain for themselves. These petty arguments turned to armed conflicts and then to war as the need for conquest burned hot in our blood. If no lands existed that were ruled by enemies, then we would take the lands of our brethren. Okay, that's more or less what was starting to happen. The only clan to ignore these plays for powers were the Warlocks, aka the Shadow Moon clan, maybe? Secluded in their towers, they saw the danger that was present. Although it pleased the Necromancers that these battles fed the earth and underworld with rivers of blood, the Warlocks feared that no orc would be left alive. This would serve to upset the delicate balance that allowed them to control the powers that they held in check and called upon to work their magics. It's sort of more like shaman in Warlock. If this balance were to be maintained, the Orcish Hordes would need to be supplied with new battles against a common foe. It was during a period of research that the small tear in the dimensional fabric was noticed. Many years passed as the Warlocks sought to unlock the mysteries of this tiny rift. The undertaking of numerous trials and tests led to the conclusion that this phenomenon could serve as a portal to another dominion if it could be controlled. The Orcish Warlocks began experimentation towards focusing the rift, gradually making it larger and more stable. Eventually, they were able to create a small portal just large enough for one of their clan to pass through. Okay, not like that. Medivh was in contact, and they built it together, and it was big enough for their army from the start. The stories that this subject returned with almost convinced his colleagues that the experience had left him insane, but the strange unknown plants he held served as sure evidence of his claims. This allowed the sect to approach the strongest leaders of the splintered orc clans and request that they cease their war for 1 year. At the end of that time, they promised the chance to accomplish the taking of a new world. I actually think they might have mentioned that 1 year hiatus thing, or something like it, in Rise of the Horde. Controlling the rift proved to be easier as it grew larger. Oh, that makes sense. And within the passing of 3 moons, it stood ready to send a small detachment of troops to this new world. A blue circle of energy, roughly 2 1/2 orcs in width, was the sight that greeted the Orcish clan chiefs. Streaks of black and red raced across it as it crackled with otherworldly fires. 7 warriors were to enter the portal and return with a report detailing the type of lands and creatures that were to be found on the other side. As the Warlocks began their incantations to access the power of the rift, a howl began. Low at first, then rising in pitch like a dark wolf baying during the blood moon. When the sound grew near to deafening, the warriors were motioned into the circle. now alive with 1,000 colors intertwined and clashing in some cosmic dance. What awaited these 7 was beyond even their wildest imagining. Oh, here we have, I'm assuming, Garona, who they've done their best to make into a ridiculous object of hyper femininity, except for the head. I think the way that Garona looks now in World of Warcraft is much cooler. The sack of the village was a simple matter, hardly worth the telling, yet hundreds of times the tale was recounted, and 100 more would be expected and relished. A group of strange, sharp-edged buildings was the first sign of any true opposition they encountered. A rough dirt path led into a trio of farms. The gray of dawn was lightning as the sun of this world rose over the hilltops. It was a bright yellow orb that shone twice as brightly as our own and made the days exceedingly hot. Then out of the odd little hut came what must have been a member of this land's true race. Small, pink, and spare of muscle were these creatures. The warriors grinned wickedly at each other, knowing that if this represented the breed of stock they would need to pen in order to take this world, victory was but a matter of moments. Rushing out of their hiding place, they swarmed upon the village and slew every living thing they could find. The males offered some small resistance, but the females and the children were like taking grok to the slaughter. What is grok? No longer a thing. Their homes held few values, but their fields were full of tasty grain. Their livestock, as little as there was, also proved excellent, and what they could not eat or pack was set to the torch. The trinkets brought back from this place were of a craftsmanship unknown to the Orcs, and were quickly taken by the leaders of the clans for their own treasure hoards. This new world, heavy with vast expanses and soft, weak protectors, would prove a rich jewel to add to the crown of the Orcs. Our order of ascension is a simple one. Only the strongest survive. All matters of politics or dispute are settled in open debate. So again, this is a reference to the democracy of the Orcs. That's sort of not at the forefront of what they're known for. This can lead to hostilities in many cases, but it is the fastest and simplest way to come to a conclusion on most matters. Each Orc has the right to make heard his arguments as long as he can back them up with fact or steel. To gain the upper hand is a sign of strength, and strength is counted highly among the hordes. A decisive victory in battle raises the commander and his warriors to a place of honor and control. This hold is tenuous, however, for the higher one climbs, the farther and more deadly the fall. By this time, we had learned much of this new domain and those who dwelled here. While difficult to understand in many ways, they proved similar enough to us in many ways. A sharp blow to the head resulted in death, lack of food led to starvation, pain also affected them in the same way it had all of our enemies and proved to be an effective means of extracting information. To learn that the name of this place was Azeroth and the inhabitants here were called humans was among the first bits of information we gathered. We began the taking of Azeroth by moving out cautiously and learning what we could, but all too soon rash judgment prevailed as the taste of greed tainted the palates of the Orcish clan chiefs. After many arguments ensued, it was decreed that an assault upon the tall castle in the north would serve to crush our enemies and place the Orcs upon the throne of power. More and more warriors were brought through the rift, and with them seemed to come the essence of our world. The Warlocks claimed it was some effect of the portal, but the lands about our entryway soon became as desolate as those of our home. Again, that's not true. That swamp is just a swamp. Entry into the castle was a simple matter, for the prosperity that had made this land so attractive to us had also bred weakness in the humans. Their guards were unprepared as our forces poured through the gates and over the walls of their stronghold. Their males did well to stop us for as long as they did, but our numbers and strength soon tilted the battle in our favor. Victory would have been assured but for the arrival of their great mounted soldiers. These fiends rode atop beasts of muscle and sinew that crashed through our ranks and dealt as much damage to our troops as did their riders. That would be the knights. These knights, as we have come to know them, rallied what few soldiers remained and began driving us out of the castle. Our every turn was countered as we were forced to retreat towards the gateway back to our world. Some trick of magic had them always at our back, sides, and in our path. We barely reached the edges of the swamplands that now surrounded the portal and eluded our prisoners in its murky depths. So again, this first sacking of Stormwind that is defeated, that happens in the middle of the first war now, as it's been retconned. But in The Last Guardian, I think it's more like this. Like in The Last Guardian so far, we're not even really to this war. So The Last Guardian more tries to follow this storyline. And as far as that goes, then we're not even into the first war yet in that book. So you could argue that the Last Guardian is probably fully completed before this game even starts, according to the old chronology. But again, we're just mixing things around. It has been some 15 years since this costly decision altered the course of our destiny, and that right there is why. The first war is over within a few years. We can't have 15 years building up before we even start it. Many called for the closing of the gate, while other factions fought for another attack upon the humans with all of our forces. Out of this chaos arose a single orc with a cunning and guile that few others possessed. Careful manipulations and the use of what support he could muster made his voice ever stronger as time passed. After key opponents were dealt with, few could offer any opposition to his plans, and the rule of the great orc war chief Blackhand was upon our people. His cruelty and dominance in battle is only overshadowed by his lust for power. He has studied the means with which human armies are able to defeat overpowering numbers of orcs through strategy and guile. From these tactics, he has learned to bring organization to the scattered attacks of our raiding parties. He sought assistance from both houses of the arcane arts, searching for other weapons to add to his arsenal. The culmination of these plans will involve the uniting of all the Orcish clans, armies, warlocks, and necromancers alike. And again, we know that the clans actually have clan names once you get to Warcraft 2, instead of the clans being the different jobs that they can do, to bring about the eventual destruction of the human race. The Age of Chaos is now at hand. Yeah. Garona of the Shadow Council. They're not calling it the Age of Chaos. Who would want that? They're a much more reasonable, less cartoony race. And I like that they went that way. But this was just them throwing their first game out there. Also, you could argue that you are taking on the role of a famous hero of Warcraft lore, whether you're an orc or a human. I haven't determined who that would be on the human side. Maybe like Turalion. And it could vary. A strong argument can be made that you are playing as Orgrim Doomhammer from the Orc campaign, and since that's really the more canon campaign, you could argue that the first game you are Orgrim. So that's what I'm going to do. That's going to be my little conceit. Here we go. We'll go through these units, and then we'll do one little treat at the end. They have peons. They're still called that in Warcraft 2. They're all cowards, and they build grunts. Pretty sure that's what they're still called, even in the second game as well. Spearmen are their ranged forces. I think in this game, the Orc campaign is a pinch harder due specifically to this. They do a pinch more damage, but they have less range. And that difference of more range for the archers makes the human campaign significantly easier than the Orcish campaign. That thought just came back to me. Raiders are their wolf riders, so even back here we have riders of, they call them dark wolves. I think they're called something else, dire wolves or something. That's their answer to knights. The dead that they summon, they have catapults, and they actually keep their catapults into the second game. Necrolites, I like that they're calling them Necrolites here. Here we go, Necrolites, which are their Necromancers. That's their answer to priests, which is cool because you have dark versus light. They have warlocks, that's their answer to mages. They have Shadow Spear. I guess that would be like Shadow Bolt of a warlock. Raised Dead. Nobody has that. There are no necromancers. There are necromancers in Warcraft, but there are no playable necromancers. Oh, I mean, I guess you could argue that Death Knights are very close to that. And I think you get Death Knights in the second war, Warcraft 2. Dark Vision is their vision spell. Warlocks or don't get anything like that. Unholy Armor is a buff. I think there is actually an Unholy Armor spell that I think it's a passive that Warlocks have now. Warlocks have Fireball? No. Not really. I mean, they do have fire. They have that little fire blast or whatever it is, their main. I don't remember what it's called. Okay, they do have a fireball. It's their main little spell. Summon spiders. Nope, that's gone. Poison cloud? I don't think anybody has a poison cloud type spell. Not that I can think of. And they can summon demons. That stays. That's the main power of a warlock. So that part they hung on to, that warlocks are demon summoners. That's actually pretty stinking OP. It's way, the demons are, I believe the demons are better than elementals. They build their town halls. They build their farms. In the second game, they become pig farms. They have barracks. The look actually stays similar. They're lumber mills for their spearmen, upgrades, kennels for their wolf riders, towers and temples. Warlocks come from the towers, necromancers, temples. They need gold mines as well. Oh, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. Look at that thing right there. This creature has some problems. I'm sorry. I want to keep this PG, but I just can't get over this one, like 2 foot long breast with a giant nipple spike. Oh man, whoever this guy is, Rose, Rose, he's got some problems. But we've got ogres, scorpions, spiders, brigands, all the same ones that we had on the other one. All right, so that is it. But before we log off, I think this would be the appropriate setting for us to just take a peek at the intro storyline, the intro little game to the intro movie. Look at this. You got to pretend you're on DOS. Let's play this on Orcs and Humans. So, turn our volume down here a little bit, and I will have to tweak this as time goes on here. I'll turn down the in-game volume. All right, let's.
In the age of chaos, 2 factions battled for dominance. The kingdom of Azeroth was a prosperous one. The humans who dwelled there turned the land into a paradise. The Knights of Stormwind and the Clerics of Norsha Abbey roamed far and wide, serving the king's people with honor and justice. The well-trained armies of the king maintained a lasting peace for many generations. Then came the Orcish Hordes. No one knew where these creatures came from, and none were prepared for the terror that they spawned. Their warriors wielded axe and spear with deadly proficiency, while others rode dark wolves as black as the moonless night. Unimagined were the destructive powers of their evil magics, derived from the fires of the underworld. With an ingenious arsenal of weaponry and powerful magic, these 2 forces collide in a contest of cunning, intellect, and brute strength, with the victor claiming dominance over the whole of Azeroth. Welcome to the world of Warcraft.
Look at that. So we've got this welcome to the world of Warcraft. That's pretty neat there that we get that call out. And as you can see, with those amazing graphics and that awesome narrator, who I think is actually the same narrator who does the intro video for Warcraft 2, give that guy a cookie. That would have just blown up my poor little computer back in the day. All right, so when we play, I'll make sure to cut the music on the game off, so our ears don't get blasted out. We'll see how that goes, but I've got another episode in Pipes 5x5. I'll see you on the next episode of Lore Warcraft, where we'll actually start playing the first couple levels of each campaign. All right, see you in the next one. Thanks.